Hello, everybody. My name is Max, and welcome to another B2 First speaking lesson. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at all the languages necessary in part one and the things that you need to do in order to get your part one done. So let's try to see what languages we need, what kind of, let's say, vocabulary, phrases, things we can use in part one together. So without any hesitation, let's begin. All right, so here, as you can see, we've got a couple of words, phrases on top, and there are some functionalities down here, such as giving example, giving reason, adding information, asking for repetition. What I want you to do right now is I want you to pause this video and try to put these words, phrases, into their categories. You have to put them in a correct category. For example, which of these words we can use for example, to give example, which one we can use to give reason, which one we can use to give to add information, and which one we can use to ask for repetition. So please pause this video, try to do this. Okay, very good. Did you finish? Fantastic. Now let's check them together. So the first category, example, to give an example. We can use some words such as like, such as, for instance. So normally we say, for example, right? But is that only the language that we can use? No, there are many other languages you can use, like this, like, such as, for instance. So try to also use these languages whenever you want to give examples. As you remember, we talked about part one. We said in part one, you should try to, whenever you're dry out, you don't know what to say, you can use, let's say you can give more examples. And in that case, you can use the language like such as, blah, 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 blah. For instance, blah, 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 blah. Like, blah, 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 blah. You can add more words. We will take a look at some examples in future as well. Now, to give reason, instead of saying because all the time, you can use other things like the reason is. So really helpful to add more reasons. You want to just give reasons, not just always saying because. The next part, adding information, we don't want to say always and. So what else we can use instead of and? Can say also, blah, 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 blah. As well as that, blah, 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 blah. And often, blah, 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 blah. So these are very good to avoid somehow using or repeating the same word such as and all the time. As I mentioned, if you want to get a good score for your vocabulary section, you have to use other expressions rather than just focusing on one expression and just keep it that way. No, the examiner wants to see that you can use different expressions when you want to say one thing. So if you cannot, or you're just repeating the same thing, you're not going to get a good score. Now, in case you didn't understand the question, they ask you a question, you didn't understand it. It's absolutely fine to ask for repetition. You're not going to lose point. Nothing is going to happen. The examiner will repeat the question without any problem. You can ask, for example, questions like, pardon? Could you say that again, please? Sorry, I didn't catch that. So when you say these type of questions, the examiner will repeat the question for you again. Remember, the examiners cannot use other words to repeat the question. They repeat the question with the same pronunciation, intonation, and everything the same. So when you see, could you repeat that again? Don't expect another question. No, they'll ask you again the same question. All right, now more languages. Let's take a look at some questions. Now, languages that we can use in order to answer questions. For example, if they ask you, where are you from? Which probably they will ask you 100%, unless you are taking an exam with someone who completely know you. But most cases, the first question is that, where are you from? And normally we answer with, I'm from blah, 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 which is fine. You're not going to lose any point for that. But what else can I say to look a little bit better? So in that part, instead of saying I'm from, you can use other languages like I was born in, for example, I was born in Quito, Ecuador, for example. I grew up in near blah, 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 blah. You can use a place here. For example, I grew up in, I don't know, New York. Of course, if you grew up in New York, you speak English, just saying. And I was brought up is also means you, let's say, raised. I was brought up in place by some people. This is also possible by my family, by a small family, by a quite large family, by an extended family. So you can just add more things here to make your answer longer. We don't want you to answer this question 10 minutes. No, this answer is like around 10 to 15 seconds for the question where you're from. So it's a very short answer, and it's better to just try to make your answer look better because it's a 10-second question. Sorry, 10-second answer. So it's better just keep it short, but also use a good answer. They might also ask you, what do you do there? Or what do you do here? If here is your hometown. So you can start with, I've been working, I've been studying, I've been blah, 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 blah here. Remember, I've been plus ing verb. And then you can talk about the place. I've been working at this, for example, company since 2021, for example. Or I've been studying at the University of blah, 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 blah for 2 years, and I'm pursuing my dreams in this city, or blah, blah, blah. Or I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for a part-time job. Or if you're not working, you can say just, I've been searching for example, a part-time job in this city since blah, 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 blah. Remember, with since, we use the beginning of time. For example, since 1994. With for, we use duration of time for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, for 10 weeks. The next question, how long have you been studying English? Now, this question, you can answer it, like, for example, with the same words that we say for the previous question, okay? Like, I've been studying English for blah, 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 blah. Also, you can use it some languages, like, for example, some unexpected or surprising information. For example, you say, I've been studying English, or I've been learning English for almost 2 years now. That's shocking, right? So 2 years, you speak pretty good. So that's a shocking answer. You can also answer it like that. Or what do you most enjoy about learning English? This is also a very good question. And they might ask you. So you can start with a cliff sentence. Like, what I really love about blah, 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 blah is, for example, what I really love about learning English is blah, blah, blah. Then you can talk about the things. Or if it's more than one, you can say, what I really love about learning English are 1, 2, 3, 4. Talking to the, for example, native English speakers, traveling to abroad, I don't know, finding new friends. Just say it. You can just put many reasons in order to answer this. And whenever you draw out, again, try to come up with some kind of example as well. Now, what are your main interests and leisure time activities? Now, this question gives you an opportunity to talk about the things that you really love to do in your free time. So one good language you can use in this part is I'm fanatical about. Now, this is a very good language. Fanatical, it means you're crazy, you really love doing something. So I'm fanatical about soccer, for example. Then a little bit talk about that. Or I'm fanatical about, for example, bowling. I don't know, basketball, or not just sports. You can talk about reading a book, for example. It can be about anything, whatever you do in your leisure time activities. So you can just talk about that and using this language, and then give it more details. Just give it a little bit more details. I'm fanatic, for example, about soccer, and then try to add more things to the soccer. For example, the things that you love doing, because you can hang out with your friends, you can exercise, and at the same time, you can just make new friends, blah, 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 blah. And you can talk about your main interest as well. The next question, how important are sport and exercise in your life? Again, this question can be answered the same with the other languages that we mentioned. But one thing that you have to remember with the questions like how important, remember, these questions are not asking why it's important. Most students, they answered this question like why. but it's not a why question. It's a how question. So when it's a how important, you just have to answer first. How important is it? It's not important, it's very important, it's extremely important. And then after you mention that, you just give it more details to it. So how important are sports and exercise in your life? For example, you can say, starting with, it's absolutely a must in my life. I exercise whenever I can or whenever I get the chance. You can also use the language down here, and then give it a little bit more details about it. You can just give some reasons to it after you mention the importance or importancy of that, and then you can just give it reasons, or you can give it examples as well. Remember, we don't want you to answer this part pretty long. Just 30-second answer in each question would be enough. You don't want you to answer very long. And I'm not saying 30 seconds you should speak like my favorite blah blah blah. No, that's it takes probably 5 minutes to say 2 sentences, so that's not good. You should have not a very fast speed. Like, I don't want you to speak pretty quickly, because if you speak really fast, probably your accuracy drops, so you are going to make a lot of mistakes. And if you just try to improve your accuracy a lot, just want to say everything correctly, your fluency drops. So what you have to do, you should have a balance of accuracy and fluency all the time. Not speaking too fast and not trying to correct yourself all the time, so that you can maintain a balanced speed, so that you are speaking not really fast, or sorry, not really fast, but still you're not making a lot of mistakes in your speaking. All right, the next question, what type of TV programs do you think are worth watching? Again, here you can talk about the things you love, the things you hate, the things you, for example, of course, not really hating is good, but it's better to start with the things you love. And you can also start with something you hate and move the conversation to something you love if you want to talk more. And languages here that I put here is like, I'm really keen on. Keen on means really love. Or I start by love. I love blah, 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 blah. Or I never miss this TV programs. You can just name whatever you like. That's completely fine. And also give it some reasons. Because of what? Due to the blah, 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 blah. And try to give it more reasons, using some languages that we talked about to give more reasons in order to answer these questions. And the next one, what kinds of music do you enjoy listening to? Then here you can start with, for example, something you hate. Like, I can't stand rock, for example, pop, for example, whatever that you don't like. You can start with something like that. I can start blah, 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 and then just move on and try to talk more about the things. You can also use the languages that we talked previously. Remember, some of the languages that we are saying here for some questions, it doesn't mean that you can only use it for that question. If there is a possibility to use that language in other situation, use it. Don't think Max said only for TV programs I have to say I love. No, you can use I love with a lot of different questions. So don't be afraid of using it, but remember where you can use it and how you can use it, so that you don't make mistake when you're using it. The next one, what is your happiest memory of a school? Now, sometimes you don't remember exactly, right? So you need a little bit of time to think. Say, okay, what should I say? I don't remember exactly what is my happiest memory of school. Or what is the happiest memory of some time in your life, they might ask. Now, here is a school. They might ask you your childhood, your university, blah, 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 blah. Depends how old you are. They might ask different questions, so the examiner can look at you and change the question. And in this part, whenever you want to have some time, just try to buy yourself some time in order to talk. First, you can say, well, I cannot remember clearly or very well. However, then start talking about that time that you really enjoyed, you're really happy. Then you can talk. I remember when I was, for example, in primary school, I had a teacher named blah, blah, blah. She was really kind to me. And remember that one day, blah, 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 then you can talk about your happiest memory. One day, she gave us, for example, a present. It was, for example, blah, 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 blah. And that's why I really loved that. And it was my best time in a school. You can just finish it like that. Now, what else we can say? What were the most useful things you learned at a school? So here depends on you. You can just change whatever that you think was the useful thing. Starting with probably mathematics, probably biology, geography, whatever, or you feel like, because after that you have to support it. You cannot just say probably math and goodbye. Remember, it's not a yes/no question. And if it's a yes/no question, again, you cannot just answer with yes/no. You have to just try to develop your answer. And or you can say, I suppose things like mathematics, blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And then try to give it some reasons why they were really useful at a school. For example, we can talk about mathematics, because mathematics can brings or can get you some skills, or with mathematics, I got some skills that I can solve problems easily. Whenever I'm in trouble, I know how to get out of the trouble because I can find the way out. So you see, for example, or you can talk about geography. Well, I learned a lot in geography, so I know the map of the world. Whenever I want to travel to some other countries, I know exactly about their culture. I know exactly where they are. I know about their, for example, weather, blah, 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 blah. So you can talk about that. And remember, there is no correct or wrong answer. You can say whatever you want, and all of them can be correct as long as it's in the question and you're not talking about other things. What do you enjoy learning? Again, this question can be also answered with all the previous languages that we talked about, or you can use the new language. I really like doing blah, 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 blah. You can talk about whatever that you enjoy learning and talk about law. I really like learning, for example, piano. Not only is it, for example, we can use the language not only, but also. You can say not only is it peaceful, but also it makes you feel calm and blah, 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 blah. Then you can a little bit give it more details. The next question, if you had the opportunity to learn something new, what would you choose? Now, again, these are some type of questions that you might need some time to think, but you don't have time and you cannot hesitate. You cannot say 2 hours. No. Immediately it started with something like this. Well, that's an easy question to answer. Or that's a difficult question to answer. Let me think, and then you start talking, okay? So as you're saying this sentence, try to just a little bit slow down if you feel like you need a little bit more time. Don't say it really fast. That's a difficult question. No, don't say it that fast. Try to make it slower. Like, that's a difficult question to answer. Let me think. I guess, then start answering. So if you had the opportunity to learn something new, what would you choose? And then starting, remember, this is a conditional, so you have to use the answer with the conditionals. You can answer with I would choose, or I would do, blah, 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 blah. Or you can say, well, I would definitely try to learn skydiving. Or I don't know, I would probably learn how to drive. Imagine you don't know how to drive. And you can just talk about it a little bit, why you would like to do that, why you would like to learn something like that. The next one, what do you hope to be doing this time next year? So this question is related to future. So remember, you have to talk about it in future. I hope to be doing blah, 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 blah at a blah, blah, blah place. For example, you can say, I hope to be, for example, studying politics at the University of blah, blah, blah in this country or in this city. Why? Because I love blah, 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 and I really enjoy blah, 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 blah. So based on what you love, you can just change these answers. And you see, it's not very difficult to answer these questions with the languages I'm giving you. Just have to put the languages referring to yourself and completing these questions and these type of answers that I'm giving you. And that's it. The next one, how much you use your English in the future? So again, this is a question about future, so you can talk about the possibilities. It says how might you use. You can use all, for example, I expect I'll be doing blah, 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 blah. This is one language. Or you can first create the situation and then talking about usage. What I really love is to become a pilot. And in order, for example, to become a pilot, you should speak English. And I think I can use English to communicate with other people as pilot. And when you learn this language, you can just travel to other countries and blah, 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 blah. See, I just gave you an example of pilot. You can talk about a lot of other things. So you can talk about another job and then putting that job into an area of English and how English can be useful in that job in the future. And would you consider living abroad permanently? So this is another question asking you. You can answer it like, I'd certainly consider doing blah, 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 blah. For example, I'd certainly consider living abroad or living in this country because of blah, 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 blah. Now, that and things that you can answer can be like, for example, because in this country, I have many opportunities, I have many possibilities to find a job that I always dreamed of. And then you can a little bit give it more details. Or also because everybody in this country speak the language that I love, which is English, and I can practice every single day, and I can work in an English environment, and I can just improve myself every single day. Or you can say, I'd have to think carefully about this. Of course, it's think, it's not thing, it's like typing mistake. Or it's not something I'd rush into. Also, for example, you can say something like that, which is, for example, you're not sure right now that you want to live abroad permanently or not. Now, another question is, are you someone who likes to plan for the future, or do you prefer to let things happen? So you can answer this question like, of course, it's not, again, someone, is I'm someone. I'm someone who blah, 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 blah. So let me write it here. It's not I've, these are like I'm blah, 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 blah. So I'm someone who blah, 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 blah. Then you talk about yourself, okay? You can talk about yourself, whether you plan things beforehand or you prefer to do things just, I don't know, spontaneously or like that, or you just let things happen. So you can say the question pretty easily, or I'm not the kind of person who do blah, 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 blah. You can say, for example, I'm not the kind of person who plan things for the future. I try to live my life and try to make spontaneous decisions as things move forward. I just look at the situation, analyzing it, and I just make some decisions about the future. So that can also work like that. But again, as I mentioned, it depends on you. You can just change the answer as you wish. The next one is, what kind of holiday appeal to you most? So these questions are mostly referring to travel on holiday. Now, you can say, for example, something like, I tend to, or I prefer blah, 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 mainly because blah, 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 blah. Again, for example, I prefer summer, let's say holidays or summer vacations, mainly because the weather is warm and I can do different things such as surfing. I can, for example, go to different cities and just talk about it, for example. That's an example. Some people love winter, so you can talk about winter, or some people love other types of holiday, Christmas. Again, it's up to you. And you can just talk about it without anything you want. The next one is, which countries would you most like to visit? Why? So this is, again, another question they might ask you. So the way that you can answer this question is with, I've always wanted to visit this country. Or I've always wanted to, for example, imagine you want to travel to Paris. You can say, I've always wanted to travel to France and look at the beautiful monuments in Paris, such as Eiffel Tower, and then talking about that city. Or I can explain why. Sometimes you can say it, but you should explain why. I'm just putting the language here so that just say more. I don't know why, or I can explain why. I think it's because blah, 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 blah. And you can just say it more and more and more. Now, which part of your country would you recommend for or to tourists? Why? Now, which part of your country, it's not your country, would you recommend to tourists? Why? So you can here answer like, I'd recommend this part, or I suggest this part. And then you can use some chronological, let's say, order, such as, for example, firstly, because of this, secondly, thirdly, finally, and you can just put more reasons. For example, I'd recommend north of Spain because of the weather, because of the, for example, beautiful, I don't know, mountainous areas, lush, let's say, forest, whatever that you have. And then you can just talk about the time that you recommend that. I recommend going to that place in summer because of the weather, or in winter because it snows beautifully. And then you can just give it more details. The next one, would you like to work in the travel industry? Would you like to work in the travel industry? Why not? So again, this is another type of question they might ask you. Would you like to work in this travel industry or not? So you can start with something if you're not sure. I've never thought about it. So it buys you some time to think and also answer. So I know that sometimes it's difficult to just think about an answer spontaneously. So it's good to use these languages. Or like, I'm not sure, I'd have to think about it, and then start saying it. Don't just finish your answer there, okay? Say this to buy some time, and then start answering the question with ease, and you just buy some time for yourself to think and talk at the same time. The next question, daily life. Which part of the day do you enjoy most? Why? You can answer with, for example, I'm not very good, blah, 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 during the time, for example, in the morning, or I'm best at, for example, night, evening, in the evening, or blah, 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 blah. Or I'm a night person, I'm an early person, or I'm an early morning person. And because of that, you can support it with some reasons. The next one, what do you like to do at weekends? You can say something like, for example, with a lot of languages we talk past, you can use them. Also, you can use new languages like, I try to catch up on blah, 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 blah. Activities, you can say, for example, here. I try to catch up on, for example, I don't know, what kind of activities we can talk about the weekends. For example, going to the cinema, I don't know, picnic in the park, going out with friends, hanging out, whatever activities that comes to your mind at the weekends, you can just use it here. Or I spend time doing something at the weekend or on the weekend, both correct. We can say, for example, I spend time playing video games with my friends at the weekend, or spend time visiting my relatives. Why? Remember, whenever you try out, why has to be the answer key or example. But first, always answer the question. Then, if it's necessary, you can just give reasons. What do you do to relax? Again, you can say mainly I blah, 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 to unwind. Unwind means also relax. Or most of the time, for example, you can talk about going to the swimming pool, jacuzzi, massage, reading books, watching movies, cooking, eating, whatever activity that makes you relax here would help to answer this question. Do you prefer to follow a routine or do you like to do something different every day? So starting with this, you can start with, for example, something like my problem is I want to follow a routine, but I find it extremely difficult. Why? Because of this. Or I'd always rather, for example, having a routine that helps me, blah, 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 blah. So you can say something like that, or you can say it completely opposite. You hate to have routines, so you want to do different things. So you say, my problem is that I always have a routine and it's very difficult for me to do different things, but I'd always rather doing different things instead of just staying home and following the same things I'm doing every day. Okay. Now let's go to the next part. In this part, we're going to see, Max, you mentioned a lot of reasons, adding reasons, but you didn't give us a lot of languages for that. So I'm going to give you a little bit more language here. What I want you to do right now is, again, pause the video, read these expressions, try to put them in the correct category, and then we're going to take a look at them together. All right, did you do it? Fantastic. Now let's take a look at the answers. So giving reasons, we can use that languages like as, because, since, or obviously it's blah, 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 blah. The main thing is that blah, 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 or the reason for this is blah, 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 blah. So don't say always because. Try to use other things like here, since, or the reason for this is, and try to add more reasons, give more reasons. Also, when you want to add reasons, you can say, for example, another thing is, apart from that, as well as that, there is also the fact that, and then you can just add more reasons easily after these expressions. So don't hesitate. Try to just work on the previous questions that we talked about. Go back and try to answer those questions by yourself after this video finished. Just go there, use the languages we talked about. One thing I recommend is writing some of the expressions down while you're answering the question. Try to look at some of those expressions, put it in your answers, record your voice, listen to it, and check whether you're using the languages correctly or you forgot to use the languages. And try to record again your voice and try to just check your answers again. Check for pronunciation, check whether you're using correct answer, check whether your answer is around the question, you're not talking about other thing, and check for your grammatical structures, the thing you use. So these are all helpful when you are recording your voice and listening to it. You can find your mistakes easily. Now, what else we can use? You can also use some other languages, sometimes conjunctions to connect ideas, or more languages. Look at these bold languages. These are good things you can use. We talked about them earlier, but here are more things. For example, you can say, due to the fact that so many people want to try surfing, we've put on some extra classes. So due to the fact is because of, it's like because of, but we don't say because. Or since you love gaming so much, why don't we go to the new gaming hall in town? Since here it looks like because again. The next one, the play should have been held outside, but it was canceled because of the high winds. Again, because of is look like because. The next one, unfortunately, the dance class has been canceled owing to lack of interest. So owing to, again, it looks like because, but we're using other languages. Remember, after owing to, we can use two things. We can use noun or we can use ing verb. The next one, I think I'm going off action films, so I might not watch anymore. So again, here, so acts like because. These are all different examples of using because or using other words instead of because. The next one, the town's really busy today due to the music festival that's taking place. The match was canceled and we therefore got our money back. And because of that, we got our money back. The next one, it says, so many people wanted to see the film that the cinema put on another screening. Let's say, imagine you wanted to watch a film, okay, and just put another one so that you can watch it. So that's the meaning here. So many people wanted to see the film that the cinema put on another screen of it as a result. Now, as a result means, again, because of it. So this is another one. As you can see, we use it as a result sometimes at the end of the sentence. But again, it means the same as because. Now, they might ask you also some questions referring to hopes, plans about future. So how can I start my answer if they ask me something about hopes and plans? We checked a lot of languages past about future, but here also some other languages which you can use about hopes and plans. Let's take a look at the first one. It says, at some point in the future, I'd like to do something. For example, I'd like to travel to these countries. I'd like to become blah, 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 blah. I'd like to do different things. So you can just, whatever that you like to, you can do it and say it like that. The same as the other things, like I'm planning to, I hope that I'll, in 5 years' time, I expect to, for example, I expect to live in Canada, or I expect to get my master's degree in science. Or before the end of the year, I want to achieve this. This weekend, I intend to, instead of saying I want, we can say I intend to, which is a little bit more formal and it looks better. Or just saying I'm going to. That's also possible to answer about plans and hopes in the future. Okay, now in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at more questions like this, but with the full answer. This video was mostly focusing on the languages you can use to answer the questions, but also I gave you a lot of examples of the answers that you can also use. Next video, we're going to take a look at specifically answers, not the languages, but answers. Also, we can analyze the languages they use in the questions as well. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next lesson.